Thanks everybody for joining us. It's been a couple of weeks of just being flooded with information. Some of it, most of it good, most of it incomplete, because the federal government, in pushing out so much assistance so quickly, has left a lot of details that are uncovered. We've been fortunate to have a number of good companies who have been feeding us information, doing analysis. Murphy Hesse, I think, is on the line. They have a number of postings on our COVID-19 resource page, as have a couple of other members who are helping us navigate through this. We're very fortunate at the South Shore Chamber. We have a very close relationship with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and that puts us in touch not only with their experts, but with large chambers across the country. We're in touch with the U.S. Chamber probably 3 times a week with technical information, conference calls, getting a pulse of what our members are feeling. That in turn gets carried up to federal officials in Congress and the administration. So hearing from our members has been very important for us to be able to convey up to state officials and then to federal officials what our members are going through and what kind of assistance would be helpful. We're very fortunate today. We're being joined by Steve McAllister, who is the Executive Director for the New England region. Steve is a Rhode Island resident and a good friend of the South Shore Chamber of Commerce. He has been to many of our events. He accompanies us when we go to Washington for our DC fly-in, and has been a good ally, knows many of our members, knows our territory, and knows what our businesses are going through. So, Steve, thank you so much for joining us, giving us a walkthrough on this. If we do run out of time, you, I know, have agreed to take some follow-up questions so people can email to us, and we'll get you that information. But with that, let me turn it over to Steve McAllister.
Peter, thank you very much. It's great to be with you today. You know, this is a major piece of legislation, and there's a lot going on. And as Peter mentioned, you know, the real-time information that you are giving to Peter, that he feeds to us, is very important. So I've been doing briefings like this for chambers across the Eastern region. We count 11 states in the Eastern region, the way the U.S. Chamber splits things up. And the information that we're receiving from you is just as valuable as the information that we're trying to provide, because we are meeting with the SBA administrator, our Suzanne Clark, our president. She's meeting with the administrator because they need to know what's working and what's not, and what we're hearing in the actual field. I'm not applying for these loans. I'm just giving you the information. So it's great to hear back the feedback that you are feeding into Peter, so we can share that, because there will be a phase 4 of this legislation, and we want to make sure that we make that as best as possible. So I'm just going to go over a couple of things. Everything is moving. Everything is changing from day to day since this passed. I was talking to Peter earlier, and the Paycheck Protection Program, which I'm going to spend the majority of my time on, went live on Friday, April 3rd. And around 4:30 in the morning is when most of the lenders finally received the final guidance or the final regulations of what was required in this Paycheck Protection Program. And they started taking applications in the morning at 8 a.m. So there's a lot of information out there, and there's a lot of confusion out there. So we're just trying to give as much information out as possible. I have to stress that it's very important to work with your local lenders. These are the people that you are going to work with. They're going to help you out. And because you need to make sure that all the programs we talk about today are right for your personal business, for your situation. There is not one size fits all. So that's very important. So quickly, I just want to give a quick overview of how we got here. Phase 1 was passed about 2.5 weeks ago. It seems like months ago, but it was only a couple of weeks ago. And what we're calling phase one, and that was about an $8.3 billion piece of legislation. And there was only, quote unquote, 7 million that was directed for the disaster relief fund for small businesses. So that wasn't enough. So they moved on to what we're calling phase two. They did a lot of work in phase two on the food services, trying to give relief for that industry. And they also, they passed the law on the paid leave and the paid family medical leave requirements. Now, those requirements that was passed in phase two, they need to be implemented now. So I will just touch on them a little bit here, but you got to make sure that your company is obeying to those, because they did go April 1st. Those went into effect. Now, everything I'm going to talk about today, we have really great resources. It's all going to be in writing from the U.S. Chamber. So I will send those documents again to Peter to send those out, because I'm going to be talking about formulas and different requirements. So it's much easier to have it right in front of you. We will provide that. So now we're talking about phase three, and that's the CARES Act. That was a $2 trillion package. Now, there's so much that goes into that information. We try to break everything down in what we call one-pagers. Sometimes they're 2 or 3 pages. Our summary of this $2 trillion bill was 14 pages. So you can only imagine of how much is actually in there when you dive into this, because it's not just for businesses. There's stuff in there for healthcare, education, all different things. What we're going to focus on today is 2 programs that I think are very important to get this information out to the business community. First off, that I want to dive deep into is the Paycheck Protection Program, or the PPP, you'll hear me say as well. Now, the Paycheck Protection Program went live on Friday, April 3rd. So this is a program that you can apply if you're a small business or a sole proprietor. You can apply for this today. And we recommend applying as soon as possible, because there is a cap that they may have to adjust in phase 4. But right now there is a cap. So we want to get businesses in that queue as soon as possible. Now, with everything, there's a caveat. On April 10th, to this Friday, if you're an independent contractor or self-employed, then you can apply for the Paycheck Protection Program. So what is the Paycheck Protection Program? This is a 100% federally guaranteed loan to small businesses who maintain their payroll during this emergency. But the key part of the Paycheck Protection Program is there is a formula. And if you are able to follow this formula, or if it works for your business, this loan will become a grant. So that is a huge resource for businesses trying to keep their businesses open and their people on the payroll. The whole CARES Act is trying to keep people at work for as long as possible, or trying to bring some people back that were laid off or furloughed earlier. So all this information, you can apply for this, is on the Treasury Department's website and the Small Business Administration website. But you are going to work with your local lender for the Paycheck Protection Program. That is key. You do not go through the Small Business Administration for this particular program. So you want to reach out to your local lenders, especially the people you have previous relationships with. So who is eligible for this Paycheck Protection Program? Any small business, and under the CARES program, when they're talking small business, they're talking about any employers that have 500 or fewer employees are eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program. Any 501c3s with fewer than 500 employees are eligible. That's the majority of your nonprofits are 501c3s. Any independent sole proprietor, independent contractors, anybody who is self-employed who regularly carries on a trade or a business are eligible. There are some tribal businesses that are eligible, and some veterans organizations, 501c19, they are eligible for this Paycheck Protection Program. Now, there are a reminder that when you're looking at the 500 employees, that accounts all of your employees across the board. You're full-time, you're paid in any other status. You need to stay below that 500 person to be eligible for this program. So again, this program, you're going to work with your local lender to go through. So what are your lenders going to ask you when you meet with them? You need first, the reason why you're applying for this program is you have to, because of the uncertain economic conditions. So you have to show the reason why you're applying for this is because the governor shut your industry down. You're taking major losses. Anything that has anything to do that had a negative effect on your, because of this current situation, on your business. That's how you answer this question, and then you will be qualified for this. You use this money, if you use this money to retain your workers, to maintain your payroll, to make mortgage payments, to make lease payments, and to make utility payments. That's what this money is for. Now, there's a formula on there because, again, the great thing about this program is it's going to go from a loan to a grant that you do not have to pay back if you're able to fill in this criteria that we will talk about. Now, again, you cannot start a business with this. I've already gotten that question. You have to have already been in business for a certain amount of time to apply for this program. If you're an independent contractor, a sole proprietor, or self-employed, the independent lender is going to ask you for some additional information, and we'll have this in writing for you. Different payroll filings, some different forms, 1099s that you may have to show. What your lender is not going to ask you for, what is not required, is you do not have to show that you went to another bank first to try to get credit. A lot of small business administration loan programs, you have to first show you went to another place first and was unable to get credit. You do not, that provision is waived in this. You do not have to put up a personal guarantee for this loan, and no collateral is required for this loan. So the big thing here is how much can you borrow, and how are we going to turn this in from a loan into a grant? That's the most important part of this program. So loans can be up to 2.5 times the borrower's average monthly cost, not to exceed $10 million. So here's a formula. I'm going to go over it quickly. It's a lot of words, but we're going to send this to Peter. We have a great form right in this PowerPoint that is available for you, and I will send the one-pagers on this as well. They have the formula right there, so it's really easy to follow. But just to go over it here, how do you calculate your average monthly payroll costs? So the formula is a sum of included payroll costs minus your excluded payroll costs equals your payroll cost. So what is included in your payroll costs? The majority of that is your salary, your wages, your commissions, or any type of compensation. Any payment or cash tip or equivalent, any payment for vacation, parental, family, medical, or sick leave, any allowance for dismissal or separation, any payment required to your health care benefits, including insurance premiums, any payment of retirement benefit, and any payment of state and local tax assessed on the compensation of the employee. Those are all in your included payroll costs. Again, we'll get you this information so you can look at it. For sole proprietors, there's some additional information that you'll have to show as well. Then you have to subtract from your excluded payroll costs. Now, the majority of this is, to make it simple, is any employee's salary over $100,000 you can't include. So you can include up to the $100,000, but for some of the higher salary, you're not going to be able to get the full credit above $100,000. Also, payroll taxes, railroad retirement taxes, and income taxes are excluded in this formula. And any compensation of employees whose principal place of residence residency is outside the United States, you cannot include that. So again, it's your included payroll costs minus your excluded payroll costs is going to equal your payroll costs. So that's why this is so important that you sit down and you speak with your local lenders, because you need to plug this information in for your personal business. You want to make sure that this is the right loan program for you, because we want to see that turned into a forgiven loan, so into a grant. So how does it turn into a grant is the next question I would like to talk about. And it's a formula again. A borrower is eligible for loan forgiveness equal to the amount the borrower spent on the following items, which I will list, during the 8-week period beginning on the date of origin of the loan. So once you were approved for this, it starts at the you have to go through 8 weeks, and you have to show what you spent on these costs. It's payroll costs. Payroll cost is 75%. When this CARES Act first came out, we thought it was included payroll costs. It also includes payment on your rent, payment of your mortgage, payment of utilities. But within this formula now, 75% needs to just go towards your payroll. That's what this whole program is for, trying to keep people on the payroll. You can also bring people back under this if you had to lay them off. You can bring them back to work. However, to get the fully funded forgiveness, you can't just bring them back to get the loan and then lay them off again. They have to stay on your payroll until at least June 30th. So not only just during that 8-week period, but until June 30th, you need to keep them on. If for some reason you bring people back, you get approved for this, you're working through, but then within a couple of weeks, you say, I can't, my business is suffering even more. I'm unable to do that. I need to lay these people off again. Unfortunately, that means you're going to have to start paying back this loan, and it will not be 100% forgiven. So that's why I can't stress enough that you want to sit down with your personal lenders, your banks and your community banks in your region, and make sure that this program is right for you, because there are all these different things that you need to make sure that you have in place so this loan is forgiven, because we don't want to see businesses taking on additional debt at the worst possible time in their business. So again, there's a big formula here that we will share with you so you can break it down. You can look at it here. But this is the Paycheck Protection Program, which is run through your local lenders.
Steve,
now, yes.
Steve, this is Courtney. Is there a slide in your presentation that we might be able to put on the screen? We have a couple requests in the chat box. Or is this something that you'd like to send out afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, you can go through it, but it's just a link to the website that has it. So
okay, gotcha. So it's not the formula itself.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So we will send an updated briefing material to everyone after the presentation. Or after this conversation, correct?
Yes, I know it's a ton of information to throw it out there. That's why I just kind of gloss over it, because it's easier when you have it right in front of you. Okay. And again, this information just came out, so that's why we're trying to keep the, we keep these updates. We keep updating these forms that we're sending out, these talking points that we talk about. We keep updating them with the correct information. So, what we are hearing, though, and this is what I want to stress, because I know I think Peter's already starting to hear this. We're starting to hear this from other chambers members, is that their businesses are going and they are meeting with their local lenders, and if they did not have a previous relationship, they were being denied for the Paycheck Protection Program. Now, there's nothing in the law that says you have to have a previous relationship. So you're not automatically denied because of that. However, we are hearing from the banking community is because there was such a big rush, such a big influx of people applying for this. Their first priority were the people that they already had previous relationships with, if you already had an account with them and stuff like that. However, we are hearing already today that it's starting to loosen up a little bit. I use the example of Bank of America. On Friday and Saturday, they were denying anybody who they didn't already have a previous relationship with, someone that didn't already have an account. They were denying it. They've loosened that up now because they've gotten through the initial push. So now they are taking on people that they did not already know beforehand. There are some other existing banking regulations that give some pause to these businesses to do business, give out loans to new people that they don't know. So that had to do with that. So that was one of the reasons why. And I know a lot of local businesses were getting upset with their local lenders, but there's a lot of confusion out there, and this is a lot of information, and it's just coming in. So if you were denied on Friday or Saturday from a local lender because you had no previous experience, we're asking you to go back out again. There are more and more lenders are going to be authorized for this. And so you can go back out again. If you are denied, it's not a denial across the board forever. You can go back out there. So we want to get that information out to people that, at the first try, they tried, but they didn't have a pre-existing relationship. You're not automatically denied because of that. The second program I want to talk about quickly, and then I want to take your questions. And again, all this information will be provided to you, so you look at it up front. The PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, that's done through your local lenders, and that is a program that can go from a loan to a grant if you hit the correct formula. What I'm going to speak about now is the Small Business Administration Program. So this one, you go to the SBA website to apply. Again, this is available today. And this is for the economic injury disaster loans. So there's two parts of this I want to highlight. The first part is a $10,000, up to $10,000 grant, emergency grant that you can apply for through the Small Business Administration. As long as you're using that money towards your payroll, towards your mortgage, towards your utilities, you can get a forgivable loan, so almost a grant of up to $10,000. Again, when this originally came out, we were under the impression it was a $10,000 grant. Now we are being told that it's up to $10,000. So you can apply for that. Local chambers of commerce are eligible for this. They're not eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program, but they are eligible for this. Now, there's some additional information here that I can provide on this $10,000 grant. Eligibility applicants for the EIDL, that's the disaster loan that we're talking about, can receive a $10,000 emergency grant within 3 days of the application being approved through December 31st. There is no obligation to repay the grant. To receive the $10,000 emergency grant, it is not necessary to have an approved EIDL loan. However, if you do secure a paycheck protection loan, the $10,000 amount will be subtracted from the forgiven amount. So there's two different programs, but the whole thing about the Paycheck Protection Program is you want that to turn into a grant, like this $10,000 emergency grant would be. So that's why they would deduct it from there. So I know, again, this is a lot of information, and I will take a breath in a second and answer some questions. But I also want to talk about the actual EIDL, the Injury Disaster Loan Program, the loan itself, which small businesses are available to apply for. This is a regular loan, though. I want to stress that. This is not something that will turn into a grant like the Paycheck Protection Program. But some businesses, this may be a better fit for them. They may be able to do that. Businesses with fewer than 500 employees are eligible. Sole proprietors are eligible. Independent contractors are eligible. And most private nonprofits are eligible for this loan. The maximum is a $2 million working capital loan at a rate of 3.75% for businesses and 2.75% for nonprofits up to a 30-year term. The payments are going to be deferred for 1 year. You can get up to a $200,000 loan without a personal guarantee. Approval can be based on a credit score, and no first-year tax returns are required. And again, you do not have to prove that you went to receive credit elsewhere. So these are the two things that we're hearing the most questions about. So that's why I wanted to highlight them. Again, the Emergency Injury Disaster Loan, the EIDL, that is a traditional loan. However, there is a part of it where you can get that emergency up to $10,000 grant. And then there's the Paycheck Protection Program, which you apply for it like it's a loan through your local lender, and then through the correct formula, it could turn into a forgivable loan into a grant to help keep you. The whole goal is to keep your payroll and to bring back people and keep them on the payroll. So you can't get that loan, bring the people back for 2 weeks, and then let them go again and get the whole thing forgiven. There's a formula that you have to work with, and we do not want to see businesses taking on additional debt. So I can't stress enough to please work with your local lenders. They have this information. They do this every day, and each case is going to be different. One might work for you, might not work for the other business down the street. So you need to work with them. We also have a lot of information on the employee tax credit program and the paid and sick leave programs that are all part of the CARES Act as well. Happy to talk about those. I know I threw out a lot of information there, so I want to stop here and take some questions.
Okay, great. Just as a reminder, if anyone wants to chime in, just use the raise your hand function. I'll go ahead and just start by reading a couple questions that came into the chat box. Let's see here. Sorry, let me just pull them up here at the top. The PPP application that someone's personal and business bank sent is actually different from the one on the SBA site. Do you have any insight on this?
I would go through the Department of Treasury to apply for the Paycheck Protection Program, because the SBA has so many different programs, or other loans that have nothing to do with the CARES Act. You can go right on the Treasury's website, the Treasury Department's website. They have a great resource on there. You can click on if you're an employer. You can click on if you're an employee. You can click on if you're an independent contractor, and you can and they have a frequently asked questions thing. So I would recommend you go to the Treasury's website to fill out the application and bring it to your local lender.
Okay. Another question. What's the sole proprietor requirements?
Sole
proprietor.
proprietor.
Have that information?
Yes, sole proprietors, they are eligible to, it's all how you file your taxes beforehand, whether you're a sole proprietor or independent contractor or self-employed. It's all how you filed your taxes beforehand is how you're listed within that. If you're technically a sole proprietor, you can apply today. If you're listed as an independent contractor or self-employed, you can apply on Friday, April 10th.
Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and just ask one more question, and then we have someone with a question. Is there more information on the $10,000 grant? Can I use it to pay vendors, rent / mortgage?
You can use 75% of the $10,000 grant, just like with the PPP, has to go towards retaining your payroll. However, you can use the 25% towards mortgage payments, towards utilities or lease payments.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and unmute Josie. Josie, if you can just introduce yourself and then go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, my name is Joe Zacchio, and I work at Sullivan Tire, and we have 1,300 employees, and it seems like everything we read is for 500 employees or less. What is there available for a company our size for any of this stimulus monies?
So through the Department of the Treasury, you're going to want to work with the Department of the Treasury for businesses over that 500 or below. They have special programs just for you for those things, but you want to work for the Department of the Treasury. I'm trying to shuffle through some information to get that, but it's through the Department of the Treasury. There are things that are just for employers like you that are above that you work through the Treasury Department, not the Small Business Administration. That's where the resources are set up for a business of your size.
Did they publish anything that we could look at?
Yes, they do have that. And again, I would recommend the Treasury Department's website. And one of the links there, and I can get this information to Peter, is I believe it is for the larger lenders. You click right on, larger employers, you click right on there and it takes you to what they're. The big focus that I'm sure you're aware of, everyone's been talking about, is for the small business, but there is resources available for companies like yours. It's through the Treasury Department though. So you want to focus your research and energy through the Treasury Department.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Peter?
Steve, could you clarify that for me? Because I thought some of the assistance for larger businesses would come in a later relief package, but is that part of the $300 billion that the administration has almost complete control over how it gets used?
That is correct. So there's $454 billion to the Treasury Department for loans, loan guarantees, or to support Federal Reserve credit facilities for these mid-sized and larger employees, so 500 and above. There's special programs for the airline industry and national security businesses. They when you go through this, there's going to be some restrictions on stock buybacks and compensation. You're likely going to see these new programs through the Federal Reserve that will support lending by financial institutions through businesses. So this is one of those things that is still getting flushed out, as you mentioned, through the administration. But that's how they kind of, so loans, loan guarantees, Federal Reserve credit facilities, there's $454 billion that the Department of Treasury holds, and that's for the loans, loan guarantees, and to support Federal Reserve credit facilities. So you want to work through the Treasury Department on that.
And will they be somewhat standard, do you think, or are they going to make up some of the rules as they go along? Because most of our large businesses are very different than airlines.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that we're encountering. Our people are still going through the actual, newly regulations for all these things, and we'll flush those out when it is available. But unfortunately, just kind of how you described it is, we keep learning day to day on new things because it's almost trial and error. Unfortunately, some of these it's happening because the big flood is coming in. There's so much confusion, and that'll be the next thing because, like you said, not one business is different than a different sector. Everything is different. So we're trying to stay on top of that. But I wish I could say it's cookie cutter. Here's the easy formula, and we're not seeing that.
Angela, I'm gonna unmute you if you want to ask a couple of questions that you have.
Hi, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm Angela from Cape Cod, Mass, and I have so many questions. So the PPP application, I've been working with the same bank for many, many years. And she had sent me, the manager had sent me the application on, I think it was Saturday morning, when I had first emailed her. And then last night, I went back on again to the website that you had mentioned. What was it? The Department of Treasury, I think. Is that what you said? Yeah. To get the PP application. And it was completely different. So I sent her the link. I sent her the link of the actual PDF and the URL from that website. And then she said their bank just still hasn't been updated from the Department of Treasury or whatever with the updated information, and the application keeps changing. It was very strange. And the new application was different than the one she sent me the day before. It had the EIDL on it at this time. It was asking if you were getting money from the EIDL, and it was actually part of how you were calculating the type of loan that you could actually even get for the PPP. And the sole proprietor, independent contractor, there was a few other options that you could check on the boxes for the type of company that you were. And that they were already taking the independent contractor and self-employed applications now. They weren't waiting until Friday. So I'm just so confused. And they still haven't received all the information yet, as far as how this is supposed to be working in detail. And then we also found out that the $10,000 grant, it's up to $10,000, and it's only $1,000 per person that you have as an employee on your payroll. Like, that's how it's disseminated. Mm-hmm. It's not like 75% of that 10,000 has to go towards payroll. She was letting us know that it was only $1,000 per head of who you had on your payroll. So is there any insight to that? Or I know I have so many questions. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you. And unfortunately, we're hearing this everywhere. So,
okay.
I know it doesn't give you any comfort, but it's not just you. So, okay. Again, these final, and I know I'm not on the screen, but I'm quoting, final regulations. These were given to the banks on Friday morning,
yeah,
like 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
And they were supposed to, all right, you guys are live, 8 a.m. or whatever time the bank opens.
Yeah.
So there was so much confusion out there. We were told the $10,000, and then all of a sudden it was no, it's up to $10,000.
Yeah, yeah.
And we were told, and I'm looking at on my sheet right here, the SBA can provide a $10,000 cash advance available within 3 days of the application to serve as a grant if the money is used to maintain payroll, mortgage, or lease payments.
Correct.
Increased costs due to supply chain disruption or repayment of obligations that cannot be met due to the loss from COVID-19 pandemic.
Right. And I even looked at the bill, the actual bill that was passed, like the CARES Act, and it even said right in there that there was a $10,000 grant that you would get even if you were actually denied the EIDL.
Correct.
Loan. You would still get the $10,000. But now it's not a set $10,000, it's only up to $10,000, and it's only $1,000 per head. And that $10,000 has to be like, this is my bank, she's the manager of the bank, she said, if it's not payroll for that $10,000, then it's like a separate exclusion that you have to ask for, an exception to even make it so that it's not just payroll related. So that basically if you only have, say, 7 employees, and one of our businesses has only 7 employees, we can only get the 7,000, but if we want the other 3, then we can't get it.
See that? Thank you for letting me know. I was not aware of that, so I'm going to have to follow up on that because that's not what we were originally told.
Okay.
So, and these are the things that we're finding out during the actual laying out of the process. So, thank you. I just made a note of that to follow up.
All right.
But the other part too is you had said that the IDL is only from the SBA website, which is true, and that's where I filled out the application. But the application, even on the EIDL, like the SBA website, and I don't know if anybody else might be able to answer this, but the information's changing and the application changed. Like from the from the 2 times I did it, 3 times actually.
And the website crashed, so you can, it's through the SBA.
Okay.
I think the Treasury's on there as well. I'm just saying it's through the SBA, whereas the Paycheck Protection Program is through Treasury. So that's the only difference. But yeah, we heard the SBA's website crashed, and then they come back live, and now the application is different. So
right, and then I got another email from the SBA that said I needed to go back on and do it again.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, and it can take me out of my queue, it said.
Okay. What I would recommend, and again, this is, I would recommend that you work with the local SBA office. Yeah. If that's Boston or wherever, that's who you need to reach out with. They seem to be the best resource for individuals. That's what I would recommend.
I see. Angela, let me just chime in here. If you have some specific issues, if anyone on the call has any specific issues or has run into anything specifically, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll do our best to kind of get you in touch with the right people or direct you to the right information and make those connections. So just if anyone has any specific issues with your own business, please, feel free to reach out to us. We'll send kind of a updated slides when they become available. Sure. And then you'll have all of our emails, and we'll also add this information to our COVID-19 resources page, which is on our website. Okay. So just kind of as a reminder, this is being recorded. So, any specific questions, please feel free to reach out to us directly. We're happy to take some of that offline.
Okay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, everyone.
Keep your head up.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Looks like we have maybe another 5 minutes or so. So I have one more question. Can the PPE be used to pay the partners of an LLC for lost income due to the loss of clients if they are the only employees? Would that be considered a grant?
I would have to look into that specifically.
Specifically, okay.
Yes. And I know Peter had sent me some questions beforehand, so I want to hit on those.
Yep, absolutely.
Let's see here. For a sole proprietor or LLC where the only employees are the owner or the partners, can the loan be used for payroll to yourself if you're having a significant loss of income? The answer to that is yes, which is good news. The money for the sole proprietor would pay themselves counts in your payroll calculations. That's up to the $100,000. So anything above $100,000 you can't include. Also in that question was, if you have a home office, can the loan be used to pay mortgage payments? So this is the first one I've been asked that, so I asked around, and they were saying, to be on the safe side, unless the business owner has a history of using home offices as a business expense when doing taxes, that isn't something that should be counted now. So we don't want anybody get jammed up on that. And the other question, will churches and other houses of worship qualify for loans as part of the CARES Act? Yes, that was something they came out with today. But faith-based organizations qualify under CARES. The SBA just released some guidance on that. So I recommend you go to the SBA website if you are a church or other houses of worship. You do qualify for the CARES Act.
Okay, Peter, did you have another question?
Yeah, Steve, it might be helpful to you if she's still on the line, but Margaret LaForest from the Mass Office of Business Development, I think, is joining us. They've been a really good partner as well, helping us with state programs and dealing with our businesses. If she's still on and I can call on her, maybe she can give you a quick summary of what she's hearing beyond confusion. I mean, we understand it's great everyone's rushing to help, but it has created confusion. But Margaret, are you still
Yeah,
on?
Margaret's on. I just unmuted her. So Margaret, if you want to jump on. Can we hear you? Where are you? Margaret? I can't hear her. Can anyone else hear her?
She may have muted her own phone.
Okay.
All right, we'll try to get some of that for you, Steve, and report back what they're hearing as well. But I would encourage everyone, as frustrating as the changing or the bouncing ball on this is, if you have specific questions or problems with your own applications or looking for help, start with your lenders, but also reach out to us. We'll be glad to try to get you more information and kind of share the problems and questions you're having with the state and federal officials. And that will help as we gear up towards the next phase of relief that may be coming in April or May.
Peter, we
Yes.
have one more question, Steve, for you. If a restaurant, hold on. Oh my goodness, it's hard to go through this chat here. If a restaurant is currently closed, can they apply for PPP but not bring employees back until the restaurant is open?
The majority of it is to keep the people on payroll. So if you're going to pay them, you would do that, but I don't know if it would be in the best interest to take on something if you can't, if you're not going to be working full time. Because like I said, if you bring them back and then you can't keep up with that and you have to lay them off again, that's going to be subtracted from what the forgivable amount is going to be.
Okay.
And just to quickly go over, like I said, I have this PowerPoint. I'm going to send the small business guide and checklist to Peter, which is updated constantly from the U.S. Chamber, that has all the formulas that you need. It has the resources. I'm going to be sending an economic injury disaster loan guide from the SBA that talks about that emergency grant, of who's eligible, what the loan looks like. I'm going to send a guide to the unemployment retention tax credit, which your businesses may be able to take advantage of. I'm also going to be sending you a thing on paid leave programs. We just drafted this today and posted this today. So that is new information that I think is very helpful. Within this PowerPoint, there's a little more detail. I mean, it's kind of higher up. We've gotten a little more detail through our talks, but it's going to talk about what all employers are eligible for, what mid-sized employees are eligible for, and the small businesses are eligible for. There's a link to a number of the resources that I just mentioned that I'm going to send. And, there's a lot of information out there, and we just want to stress, please meet with your local lenders, find the right program for you. If it's not PPP, maybe it's the loan, maybe it's just the PPP, maybe that's not going to work. Each individual needs to sit down with their lender to know what's best for their independent business, because we want this to be resources for you. We want this to work to help you stay in business, keep your doors open, keep your people employed. I wish you all luck, and we're all in this together. And please, I know this is a ton of information. More questions come up, reach out to Peter, let us know, and we're happy to all work together and try to get through this together.
Great. Thank you very much, Steve.
You're welcome. I hope it was helpful. Like I said, I know it's a lot of stuff, but we'll follow up, and we're here. Peter knows how to reach me anytime. So.
Okay, great. Thanks again, Steve. I'm going to go ahead and just put our email and our website in the chat box, and feel free to reach out to us if you guys have any additional questions you'd like answered, and we'll do our best to get them answered for you. right.
All
Thanks
right.
for joining us.
Thank you very much.